Hello, Learning Cafe community. Welcome to our April Learning Cafe with Joanna Curry Sartori. I'm Jillian, and I'm stepping in for Laura today because she's attending a conference. But have no fear, the talented Naya is here to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Couple of gentle reminders that we have saved some time with Joanna for Q&A. So if you can put those questions in that Q&A section of the Zoom, Joanna's really hoping to use the chat to chat with you. So if you can put those there, that will ensure that Naya and I don't lose any questions during this time today. And if you hit a hiccup, you can always direct message Naya or myself, and we'll make sure the question gets where it needs to go. So that's all the house cleaning. And now I get to introduce Joanna to you formally. And I want to make sure I don't miss a moment of this bio. So forgive me when I look away from you while I do it. But Joanna Curry Sartori is a licensed marriage and family therapist, educator, parent, and founder of the Self Leadership Collaborative. After years as a school-based therapist and a consultant, she developed Pause for Self-Leadership, an IFS-informed, trauma-sensitive framework that helps leaders, educators, and parents to care for themselves as the foundation for caring for others. In this way, Joanna's work empowers learning communities to cultivate emotional well-being, collaboration, and resilience through the quality of everyday interactions, simply in how we show up together. Joanna's book, The Self-Led Educator, offers educators a roadmap for integrating self-leadership into everyday life with young people, starting with their own well-being first. Here's Joanna.
Thank you so much, Jillian, and welcome, everybody. I am so grateful to be here with you. It's really an honor. And I was thinking, especially at this time of year, there's so much popping and springing in our lives, so much we're juggling. Um, there's the excitement and enthusiasm to get outside, to get the kids outside, but there's all those end of year activities and events and bringing curriculum full circle and assessments and have we done what we'd intended to do this year and planning the summer and all of these things and conferences, right? And you chose to be here. So I really want to thank you. I honor your time and I hope you'll find this is really nourishing and beneficial for you. We will be taking time to check in with ourselves and practice the model. We'll be taking time I want it to feel like a dialogue, even though it is this webinar format. So I'm going to ask you if you're in a place where you're able to be near your chat to be able to respond to prompts and questions along the way. And we're really going to dive into this exploration amidst everything you hold, everything you juggle, all that you care for. How do we support ourselves to show up and sustain in this work as our best self so we can really realize our vision and purpose and service and care for ourselves along the way? We were just talking right before we came live that so often in our caregiving roles, our longing and our depth of commitment to caregiving is so in our core that we just instinctively and intuitively, we continually put others first. And that question of how do I put on my oxygen mask? How am I caring for myself amidst all this? The pause model is going to offer you a framework and a way, a holistic approach to care for yourself as you care for others. So I'm really grateful to be here with you, to be in this space, to explore this together. So I'm going to go over to my shared screen. For me, I'm a very visual learner, so I've prepared slides to kind of accompany the journey and to give you some prompts. But I think you'll still see my face along the way. So here we go. Leading from within, a pause approach to trauma-informed caregiving. So in this time, as you learn pause, first and foremost, as I've indicated, you're going to leave with a way to understand how to take care of yourself, a clear understanding of how pause supports you to remain calm, compassionate, and confident amidst all you do. You will have a chance to learn how pause supports relationships, insight into how pause improves engagement, communication, how we're getting along, and collaboration, that ability to work together with all the different things that come up in the midst of our work lives and truly personal. And finally, then, community is made up of a whole bunch of relationships. So pause can support us at a community level in our schools, in our businesses, in our nonprofits, in our spiritual or religious communities, wherever you may be. It's a repeatable process we can follow as a group with children, families, colleagues, to realize an intentional way of being together. So here we go. And I want to invite you to begin with me by taking a pause. So we already kind of got on a roll. I invite you to take a moment, 1 minute, and just notice how you are right now. And almost like your sweetest best friend could whisper in your ear, "How are you?" And just dip your attention inside. And as you ask yourself, "How am I?" you could just notice what's there in your body physically for you right now. Tension, relaxation, busyness, tiredness. And I invite you to welcome whatever's there. This is the moment we have to live, this one right here, right now. So it's part of being human. It's going to be different every time we dip in. And let's see if we can't just welcome whatever's here. So then moving on, what's on your mind right now? What are you thinking about? And maybe you're still have like parts of you thinking about what came before this, what comes after, what you have to take care of. That's natural. Just notice it. What's on your mind? What's top of mind, as they say? And then settling in even a little further, what's on your heart? What feelings are there? What emotions? And see if you can just acknowledge whatever you're feeling. This is your human experience. And so, as a fun way to just connect with each other, as in terms of what did we find, saying when we checked in, how are you? And this is a super fun one we do with kids as well. How are you on a scale of dog? And hop over to the chat with me and see if one of these dogs, even two of them, reflects a little bit how you are right now. And you can share the number in the chat so we can see how we're all doing here today. We have a 5. Okay, yep, got that. A 1, a 7. Yeah. 4, 5, 3. Wow. Okay. 6 and 7, a 3. So we have a mixed crew, huh? Yeah, you're noticing how you're doing. This is fantastic. All right. Good. So just notice for a moment, what was the effect? So that was a brief pause, a little check-in with yourself, and a little bit of sharing with each other, right? What was the effect of pausing for you? Did it shift anything in you? Did it prepare you even 5% more to be here, to be present, to be ready for this experience? So could you put in the chat, if there's one word, what the effect was of pausing just now for you? What was the effect in a word? Calm, focus, awareness, acceptance of self, clarity, check-in, relaxed. Fantastic. Focusing on the moment, aware, fresh, reflection. Yeah, so, very often when it comes to self-care, we feel like I don't have enough time. What I love about pausing, even intuitively just taking a moment, is that in a minute or two, we can give ourselves that breath, we can give ourselves that acknowledgement, we can give ourselves some awareness, and also then maybe be ready to show up just a little more with whatever's next for us in our lives. Whoever's there, whatever they need, but we're a part of what's happening rather than continually skipping over ourselves. We matter. It's a way to value ourselves. And it's as close as our own breath. As one of my favorite colleagues, Kath Sharino, she was a superintendent I worked in, and now she's joined my team. She loves to joke with school leaders and say, The thing about breathing and pausing is it's really low budget, minimal time investment, high returns. So I think we kind of just got a taste of that together right now. So let's dive in, looking a little more. So as we arrive in these spaces, over and again, what I find is very often there's two things in the room. There's our sense of kind of the current challenges we're facing, the need, the concerns, and that's often what brings us here. And side by side, we have a sense of what we know is possible, what we hope for, what we wish for. So, in that space of current challenges and concerns, sometimes it's about the young people we're caring for and their emotions and their behaviors and the dysregulation and their capacity to learn and grow or not. Maybe we're worried about their families, their practical circumstances, their level of safety, their social emotional capacity. Maybe we're coming with concerns and awareness about how we're being together in our teams. Very often, when I've worked with schools and communities, teachers will say to me, well, honestly, Joanna, I don't really have that much trouble with the kids, but getting along with my colleagues, some days that is so hard, right? How do we come together with a shared mission, but it's so misunderstandings, miscommunications, assumptions, opinions, disconnects, and it's painful, right? And then amidst all of that, how are we doing on the inside? So many educators I'm finding are feeling overwhelmed and discouraged, um, kind of disconnected from their sense of purpose, wondering if it's meaningful and impactful, tired, ready for summer right now. How do we hold all that? Well, what often prompts us to keep getting up every morning is we do know something else is possible. And not just because we envision it or we imagine it or someone told us about it, but we have our days when we're in this other state of being. We see it in the kids. That kid who maybe one day they're struggling or they're not getting along, the next day they're holding the door or they're sharing their pencil or they're saying please and thank you calmly, right? We have those moments of breakthrough with a family where we're able to connect with them and they understand us and we understand them and we unify as partners raising these precious children. Or maybe that's what happens in our teams. Or maybe there's just days inside of us where we woke up on the right side of the bed. We feel okay. We feel good inside. We recognize the value we're bringing. We kind of feel I often think of it as like that day where it's the water off the duck's back day. Like even though it's hard on the outside, somehow we feel centered and okay on the inside. So we know that's possible. And we know those hard, challenging days. And in our local and global context, being able to access that more optimal state feels so critical and essential, not just individually, but collectively. And so for me every day, the question is, how do we recognize and build that bridge to access that more optimal way of being together, caring for each other, nurturing each other, valuing life, and working together toward caring for our young people and the future they're inheriting, right? What is that bridge? So very often when we ask that question, we say to ourselves then, okay, well, what do we need to do? What works? What do we do when it works? How are we going to do more? And next thing you know, we have a new initiative, a new program, a new project to do, and we're busy with more to do, and it's a social emotional learning thing, and it's going to help. And then we have a new protocol for how we talk to people, and it's just more to do. And so here's my invitation in the spirit of pausing today. What if the shift we're looking for is less about more to do and more about how we're being? Because if you think about days that work and times when it works, so often it's how we're being together, our state of being, that unlocks our capacity to do everything we need to do. And I think so many of our programs and initiatives we put in place are trying to point us to accessing this state of being. So, pause is designed to support us together to unlock this shift in how we're being in community. I want to credit that the pause model is inspired by internal family systems. So, just in case you haven't heard of it, it's developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz. It's a psychotherapeutic model. It's trauma informed, attachment enhancing, mindfulness based. It's beautifully non-pathologizing, so we can look at everything going on within and between us as workable. It's evidence-based. And while internal family systems talks about how do we relate to the dynamics and systems within us, it's also how do we relate to the dynamics and systems between us. A number of years ago, I was working as a school-based community therapist, trained as a marriage and family therapist. My son was in preschool, and our community here in Connecticut, where I live, experienced the horrendous tragedy of the Sandy Hook school shooting. And a colleague of ours at Central Connecticut State University lost her daughter. And I need to wake up the next morning and walk my child to his preschool class. And so a number of us here really felt this very profoundly, close to home personally, and decided to meet every Tuesday to ask what was the paradigm shift we needed in our schools, in our communities. With so many well-intentioned professionals, so many programs and initiatives, what's the paradigm shift? What gets at the root and the core? And a number of us were trained in IFS. And so we started asking ourselves, if this is so transformative, profound, and effective in the psychotherapeutic space, how do we translate the simple essence into every day for everybody of every age and bring it to our children and communities? So we extracted the essence, we've made it practical and powerful, and now it's being applied in communities around the world. This picture shows just a few of the educators. We came together for a conference in Colorado a few years ago, but just in this little snapshot, you have people from India, Jordan, Lebanon, Germany, California, Colorado, Florida, Philadelphia. So just in that snapshot, right? It's become a globally relevant model. And what's really deeply moving to me is because it doesn't prescribe, here's what to do in every situation, but it helps us access our best self to respond as the needs of the moment. In that way, it's inherently culturally responsive because we're not being told use this language or do this thing. It's access who you are in your core to show up present and connected to respond together. So I want to touch on the two core concepts from IFS and then teach you the pause model. Let me just cross-check where I'm at on timing here. Okay. I want to bring you back into the dialogue with me. So could you take a moment and just think with me this idea of like when you're having a good day, you're kind of at your best, how you're being. So when things are going well, we often study what's the problem, what's not working. Let's study what works. When things are going well, how are people being together? Think of what are their qualities, their characteristics, their attributes. Pop that in the chat for me. Laughing, smiling, uplifting, empathetic, cooperative. Yeah. Cooperative again, smiling and dancing, happy. I feel like a preschool playground at its best, right? Friendly, supportive, mindful, joyful, and that all as adults we're allowed to have these qualities too, right? Kind, rooted together in virtue, laughing. Yeah, there's joy, hopeful, working in our strength, supportive, kind. Yes, thank you. Now, try this with me. Having just thought about that for like 30 seconds, notice how you feel right now. And if that had an impact on your state of being, just to think about it. That's the power of our minds, too, to learn to notice these qualities, remember these qualities, notice it and celebrate in ourselves and others. Think about what's working. That's our foundation we want to grow on. So as much as we meditate on and study what's not working, we have to continually come back to these exquisite characteristics that are at the heart of our humanity. And that this is actually our birthright. When we are not stressed out, feeling threatened and overwhelmed, our physiology is built for this state of being together. In internal family systems, this is referred to as self-leadership. And what Dick Schwartz found is that when he was speaking with people about understanding their response to stressors, and when they finally came to where they were like, well, that's not my kind of protective response, he'd say, well, what is that? And he's found so often people use these 8C words to describe their state of being when they're their best self, when they're coming from their core, centered, on their game, in the flow. And if you look at those words, they're not meant to limit how we describe it. It's not like, well, it's not one of the 8Cs. These are synonyms, mirrors of pathways to this optimal state of being that, again, I find and believe and know is our birthright. It's built into our physiology. We're allowed to be this way together. And all the words that you garlanded just now are another other words to describe signs and signals when we're like there. So that's our birthright. We possess this capacity within us, and yet so often something else takes over, right? And that's when we're stuck in locked horns and all that jazz. So let's take a moment now and acknowledge and honor that. What is it that happens on, so to speak, a bad day, a tough day, a stressful day? How are people being on those days? And maybe you name it as reactions you see, different parts of them that come up, and share those words in the chat just so we can name that as well. Yeah, there's that rushed, like never enough time, jumping to the next thing, the stress that comes with that, closed off, short, sweating, crying, cranky, irritable, negative, misunderstanding, stressed, complaining, cold shoulder, alone, cranky, yeah, quiet, sort of withdrawn, wee bit scary. Yep. Ill, tired. So there's physical responses that happened. How about blaming, judging? Yeah. So this is the other response that often happens. Confused. Thank you. Yeah. So the other response that can happen is if on a bad day when things aren't flowing, time is funky, there's misunderstandings between people, we don't feel at our best, we don't feel safe, we don't feel welcomed and included, perhaps. That creates a feeling of, yeah, not feeling safe and feeling threatened, and we move into self-protection mode, right? And that can show up, stress can show up in all kinds of different ways. The second idea from IFS is a really helpful way of understanding our stress response. So I'm going to kind of give you a super tiny nutshell version of this, but in a nutshell, the way I think about it is that from the moment we're born in the arms of our very first caregivers and going forward, we are looking to get our needs met, right? So we're trying to figure out how am I going to make sure that I am safe and included and valued and taken care of, and that they think I matter and I'm special enough. And so we're looking for those twinkly eyes on us that say, I got you. I love you. I'll take you with me. I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. I'll help you out. I'll guide you through. And we'll do anything we need to do to get those eyes, those sparkly eyes. And depending on our family context and everything going on, and then what's going on with our friends and our neighbors and our schools, we try different strategies. Like, do I have to be the superhero? Do I have to try and juggle everything? Should I always be helpful? Should I be quiet and removed? Should I be the problem solver? Maybe if I have a tantrum, right? By the time kids, even 3, 5 years old or younger, when they show up in the first days of a learning community, very often they've already come in with figuring out for them some of the different strategies that work. And if it works in their context, it's for safety and survival. They put it on repeat. And every time we go to that strategy, think of it, your body is practicing it, your mind and your heart. And it becomes a little bundled package. So it becomes a part of you. It's not all of you, but the next time you see something that looks like that stressor, that difficulty, that situation, oh, they're turning their back and not including me. Oh, they're laughing at me. Oh, they want to give me extra work and then I'll feel like I'm good. Anytime we see that again, we pull up that part of us, right? And even some of our parts of us that are caregivers, we can hear its story goes all the way back to early in our lives where that was our job and became a primary part of us. So the crazy, cool, powerful, game-changing piece that for me with IFS, the important piece here is that all of these parts of us develop to protect us. They develop with a positive intention, even if not a positive impact. When I walk around with parts goggles with kids, colleagues, family members, myself, and I start thinking, I wonder where that part of them's coming from. I wonder how it's trying to protect them. I wonder what its job is and what its positive intent is. Such a different way to relate. It opens up compassion. And it's not all of them, it's just a part. So, self and parts comes into everyday action with pause like this. I'm going to tie the little bundle together here and then we're going to take it on the road and give it a try. So, all day, every day, we're navigating stressors, some big, some small, right? And some of them are what's happening right here in front of us, and some of it's what's on our mind. Like my taxes are due, and how much of my money am I getting back, and what am I going to owe? That's maybe on our mind while we're trying to take care of the two kids who aren't getting along, while we didn't get a good night's sleep, so we're feeling kind of tired and grumpy or cranky. I guess a lot of people like the word cranky, huh? All right, external stressors are happening. What's in our power is how we respond. Because so often we can sit around and talk till the cows come home about the external stressors, all the bad things happening, big and small. But then we're in a place of powerlessness. What can we do about it? And that can be really discouraging. Let's look at how we respond. So, if we look at that external stressor and we perceive it as a threat, and we go, oh my God, I am powerless. It's happening to me. I'm alone. I don't know what to do. I can't respond. We feel threatened. We feel back to feeling like that little kid who didn't know what to do. We're going to go into those protective parts of us, our knee-jerk reaction, and respond from self-protection. Sometimes those are wise, well-intentioned parts that keep us safe. Very often they're on autopilot from another time and place. And here's the thing, sometimes those have been passed through the generations. This is the kind of people we are. This is how we survive. This is our clan. That's their clan. This is where us and them gets passed through generations. Very often, those knee-jerk reaction protective responses actually don't serve what's happening in the present moment. When we pause and we like kind of put life in slow motion, we notice a stressor coming in. If we start noticing what's my automatic response, what part of me is coming up, we can have a moment of breath to choose our response and say, where am I coming from? And is this for here and now? Is it going to serve? Or do I want to take a breath and reconnect with my capacity and my core self? And then we can lead from self-leadership. The pause model offers the recipe that we can make this choice towards self-leadership by ourselves and together. I'm going to talk you through it, and then I'm going to lead you through it where you get to follow it. So pause is a process, 5 steps that you can follow to guide you through any different stressor, interaction, situation. The first step is just to pause, to notice, this is one of those moments that later I'm going to say, I wish I had paused here. So P is to pause. What's happening outside me? What's happening inside? Which brings us to the A, aware of myself. Where am I coming from? Which of those little dogs is bubbling up? What are the signs in my body? What are my feelings? What are my needs right now? I'm a part of this. Take care of myself for a moment. That often equips us then to better understand others, whether we just try and understand them by contemplating them or we go right into conversation. Help me understand where you're coming from. Let me see if I can get you and what's coming up for you here. What are some of the different parts of you? What do you need right now? A and U are the gold from chemistry. You remember that from chemistry class? AU, it's the gold. It brings us to the us. If you read that backward, the US, where instead of being at each other and we get locked there, we go side by side together, connected, back to our common values and needs, back to our common humanity, back to thinking of the greater good. And then we look at the situation, brainstorm what might be possible here. Then we experiment in action. So let me just acknowledge that coming back to how this model really started to evolve when my son was in preschool, I saw this as really important in the everyday with our educators and with our families and our children. But I was also needing it myself to get my son out the door to preschool, right? So I was still in graduate school. early as a therapist, I was handling some like, suicidal teenagers and a family in divorce, and I'd be worried about them. So I'm trying to get my 3-year-old out the door. He's hanging upside down on a gorilla gin, laughing and playing, and I've given him 3 reminders to put on his boots because it's snowing outside, and he's just delighted. He's saying, "Mommy, Mommy, come play with me." And I've come back in and out, and I've got my bags packed, and I want to get there on time. I'm worried about the family. And he's going, "Mommy, Mommy, come play with me." What happens in me? I start to feel somehow out of control. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm judging and annoyed at him. I'm worried about where I need to get to. These are all different parts of me, wanting to be good and get it back under control. And then what happened? Aaron, that's it. I've given you 3 reminders. I'm so frustrated. Would you just put on your boots? When I get frustrated and judgy and impatient with a delighted kid who's upside down, wants to play with his mom, how does that go over for him? He would just like lose it and fall into tears and feel rejected and pushed away. It doesn't build connection. It doesn't inspire cooperation either. So I remember I started to practice. I would just notice that moment and then step back into the hallway and pause and be aware of myself and take a breath and acknowledge my needs. And then remember, I do my understanding step. Remember him, 3 years old. What does he need right now? And I get a little space for my parts reacting and be able to go in relationally, acknowledge his delight in play and wanting to be with me, and coach him into get in the car so we could move into searching for solutions. So that's an example how this evolved in my life with my 3-year-old who's now applying to colleges. Oh my God. So want to try it? Want to try pause? So you have a handout you've been given. If you got that, you can open to the worksheet if you like. If you don't have that, don't worry about it. I'm going to guide you through this. We're going to just do a really light touch. We're going to take 5 minutes for this. So as I guide you through each of the steps, you can either just reflect internally. If you want, you can close your eyes. If you want, you can write. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do is pick a recent interaction that had a snag, a bump, little locked horns, little frustrating or difficult. Not the big, oh my God, I'm trying to work this out with my husband and my wife, right? Just a little, that was awkward. That was tricky. I'm stuck there. Pull that to mind. And we're going to start with the P. So we're going to pause and first just remember what was happening outside you. What was happening in that moment? Almost like you could replay it like a movie. What was happening in that moment? And then shift, almost like you could turn your camera around and notice, how was I doing? What's happening inside me? So you're just taking a breath to start. Very often we don't give ourselves that moment, do we? And let your attention settle a little further inside to be aware of yourself. Where were you coming from? And you might notice numerous things bubble up. You might be aware of what you were saying and how you were behaving. And behind that, you might tune into different parts of you, like what was your intention there? What did you want? What did you need? Maybe how were you trying to protect yourself? Whatever you notice there, just touching it lightly right now. See if you can hold that part of you, that response in you, with some gentleness. For me, often the C word of the 8 C's I can access here is curiosity, just being curious, like, I wonder why that response bubbled up in me. I wonder why that's my pattern. I wonder where it's coming from. So it softens the judgment and just think, I'm a good human being. I'm trying my best. This may be my automatic pattern, but I'm not a bad person. Can I be compassionate even? Where am I coming from? And just acknowledge that. We're not fixing it right now. We're just noticing. And just because it's a light touch, I now want to invite you to go to the you, the understanding others. And we don't have the other person here to ask them, right? But imagine you could cast your camera over to them and just focus on what their experience was in that moment. You might think at first how they were showing up, their behavior, but then maybe it shifts to, well, I wonder what they were feeling. I wonder what their intention was. I wonder what they needed. So see if you can give that gift of curiosity as you try to understand the other for just a moment. And now finally we come to the S and the E. So this is where, having taken a little step back for just a couple minutes to think about where you were coming from, where the others were coming from, S is searching. It's reflecting and brainstorming possibilities. So in this case, what might have been possible in that interaction? What might have been other possibilities? And what might even be possible, like, do you want to circle back to this person? Have a redo, a repair, or to discuss what you would like to request for next time. So just brainstorm for a moment. And then consider if there's a next action of any kind. There doesn't have to be. Maybe it's just an awareness that next time around you might approach this differently. Or maybe there is something you would like to say or do as a follow-up. So this was just a very 5 minutes step through the pause process. I want to just invite you to notice, did anything shift for you in doing that? So question number 1 in the chat, and it might be a word or a phrase. What was the effect for you of taking that moment to pause? And put that in the chat. Open-minded, a part that feels guilty because you feel like you could have done better. Some frustration comes up. Okay. Of course, I'm wishing it was a space where we could have dialogue to discuss more, because I'm curious to understand. Have better reactions, self-reflective, reflective. Yeah. One thing I do want to acknowledge is I know because of the context, we went through it rather quickly. So ideally, we have our workshop series and you learn the steps and then you build the fluency and then you can move through it more easily in 5 minutes. And I'm seeing a number of people, it just creates space for self-reflection and a reflective process. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, when we kind of stop and step back and notice what happens in our interactions, I know for me, one of the pieces is often there is some sense of sadness or regret as far as how something went down. And what I like to try and do is remember that that's also a part of me that wants me to be a good person. It may think that its strategy is to criticize me, um, but just to notice that oddly and interestingly can also be a part that's well-intentioned. And then that even gives me space to have a little breathing space from that response. And I don't know if that speaks to some of what I saw in the chat, but I offer it just as a piece of the puzzle. Remembering giving grace. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you all so much for jumping into the chat. This has been really rich to know I had this place of connection with you. So let me just tell you one or two more pieces around the possibilities with this model, and then we're just going to open it up for some Q&A space and then there'll be a little more space of that live back and forth dialogue. So this pause process, as we just did, it could be an individual reflection, right? So it can be a place to learn to do it rather briefly, or it can be a longer reflective process to kind of look at where are those moments as where it's a bad day, where it's challenging, where there's a rub, there's a disconnect, and kind of step back and say, what's the dynamic, what's happening there? How am I a part of that? But also, what do I need? And also a little perspective, what do others need? So we can find that new way forward. It's also relational in that, we can follow this, we can have the model there and follow it one-on-one with children, adults. We can do it as a community. There's an incident on the playground, and even with young children, we'll use little figurines or pictures or cards or colors for them to have different ways to name what's happening inside. Of course, you can have the little emoji type pictures and start to teach them the words for emotions, but even pre-verbal in pre-K classrooms, we've found ways for children to just start to notice these different moods and states of being and parts of them that come up, and to start to be able to name that. What happens is you activate prefrontal cortex when you name it. And that gives you a little space, and IFS is called unblending. So there's a part of me that's frustrated, and a part of me that feels sad, and a part of me that's worried. But that's not all of me. But when I can speak for that, and I'm not saying, I'm really frustrated and sad and worried, and it's your fault. Because then the other person is just going to protect themselves, right? When we speak for our parts, we can understand each other better. And then adults can take it into all different forms of wherever we need to be in dialogue and relationship effectively, at all levels of community. And the way that we bring this into community, we offer, we partner with schools and communities, and sometimes we'll work with a whole team to start studying and practicing paused and just infusing it in how we work together. And we also offer 3 levels of workshops for people who want, even as individuals. Like we've had, for example, art teachers or music teachers. They're the only one in their school who studied pause, but it shifted how they're attending to their own well-being moment to moment, how they handle difficult interactions with students. And they proactively bring pause because each letter is like a pillar of our curricular framework. They bring it into the classroom. So in a challenging moment, when there was an argument on the playground, the kids have a way to sit down and talk it through together. They have a shared language and a shared paradigm. So our essential pause course, it teaches each of the elements of pause for self-care and everyday interactions. And finally, champions level is our train the trainer level. So in the event you're finding this interested, you want to learn more, you want to practice more, we have monthly community practice that's just open to the public. We have our essential pause course that's 6 modules. Each class is 2 hours long, and I'll be running 2 cohorts over the summer. I would warmly and especially love to welcome everyone from this community to join if you're interested. It is not beyond me at all how one of the most important jobs in the planet is what you're doing, taking care of our youngest people and their families and communities. So I hope we can find a way to make this accessible to you if it's of interest. As a starter for that, I just wanted to offer out a coupon code for all of you, New York Summer 2026, Summer of Self-Care maybe, as a gift to you. So please take note of that if you think you might be interested. So, I'm 1 minute early for Q&A. I'm going to come off shared screen, and we're going to just open our space to have some chat, some talk, some chat with chat. Jillian,
Hi,
hi.
Joanna. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Somehow you're exactly what I needed today. Anyone else here feel like that's really true? We have 3 questions. So I'm going to
Great.
start with the first question.
Sure.
Um, how can we support others to pause when we may notice symptoms of dysregulation in them?
Ooh, that's a fabulous question. Um, so, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that I've sprinkled it in and that I've worked with educators and caregivers to sprinkle it in. Um, and of course, it needs to be customized to the situation, but I'll just think of a couple different examples. Um, sometimes it might be like, because sometimes if you like, hey, it looks like you need to pause, people might almost take that like, well, what's wrong? Do I seem stressed out? So, so sometimes it's letting ourselves, because of the pause model that we're a part of it, it's just sort of to name the us, like, wow, this conversation is really important, and it feels like a lot's coming up for us here. For me, it'd be helpful. Could we just slow it down for a minute and just take a breath? I want to just make sure that I'm showing up as my best self, and I need a moment to get perspective. With young people, you can have a young person version of that, like, wow, for both of us, a lot of feelings are coming up right now. This is strong, isn't it? Do you feel it? I even feel it in my body, like my body feels like a little bit tense. I have an idea. Would want to try an experiment? Like, could we try just taking 3 breaths together and we could do it together? Right? So it's not you're stressed out, there's something wrong with you. And actually, I initially did this work. I was bringing mindfulness into schools throughout the greater Hartford area. And the program was designed where I would come in and teach it to the class. The teacher would watch, but sometimes just be on their computer doing the work. And an hour later, I'd hear them take the kids down the hallway and say, Peter, you're out of line. You're stressed out. Go to the calm corner. When you're better, you can come back. And I was like, whoo. So it's constantly toggling back to the A, aware of myself. Where am I coming from? Not just, am I saying the right words? Like, I think we might need a pause right now, but am I centered? Do I actually need a pause right now? And it's okay if I do. And then to say, let's do this together. So we're not exiling and saying it's your problem and you should go in a timeout and you should go to the calm corner and you regulate yourself and come back. Kids need co-regulation. Their dysregulation is a flag. I don't know what to do. I'm beyond my resources to adapt and cope. Could you coach me? So we need to come in next to them, right? So that's some of the ways. And with a group, I'll add this one last thing. So with a group, you can also set up a proactive practice, um, like as a class, have a conversation or with some kids, like, so there's those moments when we get kind of upset and stressed out. All of a sudden we like get really angry. Like, do you ever feel like a little fireball or do you ever feel like cold and like a little stone? What do you think we should, let's have a magic word so that whenever that happens, we can just stop and take a pause and take a breath together so that we can care for each other. What should be our magic word? And early in my work, I did this with a family, and their word was cheese balls. I ran into the kids later when they were in high school and they said, Joanna, we still do cheese balls. I was like, that's cool. And have a magic word. So those are a few ideas.
I really appreciate you actually answered a little bit of our other question, which was to say, how do we bring this to children in classrooms? Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to ask maybe a harder question then, which is urgency is a major part of our infrastructure. How can we build capacity and leadership to understand the importance of what we're doing? Or
Mm,
pausing.
yeah. Thank you. Um, I mean, I've watched this spread in a lot of different ways in different communities. Um, Ultimately, the dream and the necessity is that leadership not only sign off and say, yeah, that's great, the teachers need self-care, but that they practice it themselves. And I mean, there's been districts that we've gone into where we just worked with the leadership team for a whole year, coming in monthly. And we said, look, this is not about a turnkey. This is not about bring it to your next staff meeting. This is about you. And behind closed doors, the leaders are overwhelmed and stressed and feel blamed, and everybody's pointing up to them and leaving it all on their plate. And so they too need to pause. So, I mean, part of it is discovering like, how can we have the conversations where we recognize the severity of the consequences of not pausing and not caring for ourselves and not breathing and not attending to our own well-being, and the relief and possibilities to be had when we learn that we can do that. How do we do that? It all comes down to our relationships. So sometimes the way it works is it's organic grassroots from inside in the middle. I've often had one teacher who came through our essential pause workshops started walking the talk. People are like, how come you seem different this fall? Why weren't you anxious on the first day of school? You just de-escalated that kid. And then people start going to that teacher instead of the school counselor because that teacher's just can stay centered and flow. So that's an organic way word spreads. Um, and then we also coach and consult with folks like, how do you bring this conversation to leadership and talk about the systemic importance that ultimately, if we want well-being to reach the children, we as adults need to be aware of it, practice it, and embody it in our everyday interactions. Because how we're being is what they're watching. We can have the most grand and glorious social emotional learning curriculums and programs from 8 to 8:30 every morning. But if what the children watch all day with the adults is dysregulated, protective, and if our everyday interactions, if we get stressed out when they're stressed out, if we shut down when they're blocked, if we blame them for where they're stuck, that's where they're learning social emotional capacity. So we have to make the case that this work starts with us. So I know that was semi-circular. There isn't one solution, but it's about being creative and walking the talk.
In your answer, I hear a call to action and agency, that if you believe in it and you practice it, that's one of the ports of entry to, kind
Yeah.
of convert others to this way of being in the world and in the work.
Yeah.
There's also sort of this idea that we can capacity build that way too. So I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, that summary was really circular, but because it's circular. I think it's a circular
That's our
situation.
reality, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's another quick question that came through, but and maybe answer this a little bit. Maybe you could give us a little bit more detail in the time that we have left.
Hmm.
What can we do if we feel we can't pause? So I know
Yeah.
if we can't.
So I'm picturing, for example, that you're in the flow of a busy day with classrooms of 20, 25 kids sometimes, right? And you've got large numbers of them that have different difficulties in dysregulated states, and you've got to be on all day. Yeah. And you're taking them from one thing to the next. And even if they're in someone else's care briefly, that's your moment to pee and get the next lesson ready or set up the classroom. So it's like, when am I going to pause? Totally fair. Um, so sometimes the pause is the P of pause, right? So while you're walking down the hallway, just giving 10% of your attention to the flow of your breath and inviting your breath to slow by 5%, or just scanning and noticing, how am I right now? And saying, it's okay, I got you. Like, be your own best friend for like a sentence on the inside. Um, so it's like it's those micro moments. I had a teacher I'm working with who is in a pretty intense school system. She had four kids who needed intensive care, but they didn't have one-on-ones. And one of them pushed the desk and barricaded her into a corner and was threatening her. And they're 9 years old kids. These were so um, and she just put her hands on the desk, and she's worked with me for a bit, so she noticed, kind of, she was aware of, and she practiced the pause in the non-crisis moment. So you do your fire drills before you're in the fire. She noticed the response and reaction. She noticed the impulse to yell, to blame, to get scared, to try and control. And she put her hands on the desk, and literally it was one breath. But because she'd done her fire drill practice and noticed her habitual responses, she was able to get a little breathing space and separation, get back into eye contact zone, reconnect with that kid, and had a space for choice. You still have to manage the classroom. You still have to keep safety. Sometimes the best you can do is act like, we call it self-like. Like, maybe you're not really in self-leadership. Like, ideally, you don't want to act calm, you want to be calm. You don't want to act confident, you want to be confident. But sometimes you act confident and calm because you got to get through. And then at the end of the day, at night, you're like, holy cow, what happened? And you give yourself a breather at 7 p.m. to follow the 5 steps of pause. I have a lot of teachers who just use that framework at the end of the day for 5 minutes. But that's what that capacity building for self-care in the moment is, what we nurture through our Essential Pause course. And so many people come into it thinking, this is what I want to bring to my kids. This is what my school needs. This is what the leadership needs. If only they would do it. And at the end, they say to me, Joanna, I had no idea how much I needed this for myself. Because small cohorts, it's community, finally to be with each other, to care for each other instead of just to be in do production mode. We're here to be with each other. And we need that right now so deeply. We need that. Yeah. Can I mention one other thing, Jillian? Because I realized I flew past it.
Please,
I
yes.
had the great delight of publishing a book about this in the fall. So this is my book, The Self-Led Educator. And I lay it all out in there. And I tried to make, you can tell I like interactive as much as possible. So each chapter has reflection questions and 4 or 5 different ways you can put that piece into practice. And there's a chapter on each of the elements of pause. So you can kind of see how it builds a holistic framework. And then you can imagine that becomes the curriculum. We practice and sprinkle it in little bits into classrooms, build capacity with students. That's how we bring it to students little by little, not a whole lesson, little by little, little exercises. Then they're ready in the moment when they need it. So
Thank you so much, Joanna. We appreciate you lending your time and your talents to our community. Um, Anything else, chat? Anything we want to say with our few minutes we have left? Okay. I'm going to watch the chat and we can stay on a couple more minutes, but if this is your lunch hour and you need to go, please know how much we value you returning to this community month after month. And Joanna, geez, we really value you. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Well,
thank
lots of thank
you.
yous coming through. Lots of
Yeah, I
gratitude.
see that. And I hope you all know how enormously grateful I am to all of you for what you do every day. I really know it's one of the hardest and most important jobs on the planet. I mean, and I know you're touching our future, you're touching our children now and all their families in the community. So I thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for Jillian, you and your team for making
Oh,
this possible. I was blown away when I learned about you and everything you're hosting. It's so
I,
generous.
I'm going to go ahead and say the credit goes to Naya and Laura. I'm the cardboard cutout. I'm just stepping in today.
Yeah,
But absolutely huge credit to the commitment of this team to make this space possible.
it's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.